Today we're talking about a whiskey that most of us have a story about, Laphroaig 10. Everybody's got a story about Laphroaig 10. Whether you're a connoisseur who's looking forward to the Carchis every year and sharing it with your friends, or if you are a 20-something who got tricked into drinking this at a bar by your buddy who bought you a shot, and you were suddenly smacked in the mouth with a fistful of charcoal. This is the kind of thing that people remember the first time they tried it. And so I wanted to talk about Laphroaig. Now, I've been doing this channel for well over 5 years, and I'm shocked I've never gotten to Laphroaig 10. But now that I'm here, it's worth talking about. So I'm not going to go too much into the distillery because I've already kind of talked about that at length in a different video on the quarter cask, which you can check out up there or just search for it. But I will talk a little bit in broad strokes. So now Laphroaig was founded in 1815 by Alexander and Donald Johnston, and it means broad hollow by the bay. That's what Laphroaig means. Now this is on an island called Islay, which is off the shore of Scotland. And most things coming off of that island are heavily peated and smoked whiskeys. It's kind of the characteristic of the island. Not everything is peated, but most of it is. Now, this is another characteristic of Laphroaig worth pointing out is that it's a single malt Scotch. And not every single malt Scotch now is what it used to be. It used to be that you would kind of trade or sell your product over to somebody that would blend it together and try to get a very specific flavor profile. And this was the way of most single malt scotches for years and years and years. It's what Johnny Walker built their entire brand on, and it's what they're still doing today. But in the case of Laphroaig, they used to sell to Lagavulin. And Lagavulin didn't like when Laphroaig decided to change their mind. So Lagavulin did what I would refer to as a dick move and bulldozed Laphroaig's source of water and diverted it over to Lagavulin, sorry. Both names are a little close. So Lagavulin was trying to get the same water. They ended up hiring Laphroaig's master distiller, and they tried to produce what Laphroaig made so that they didn't have to change their business model. It was never going to work. And part of the reason for it, other than just in general, it was hard to do, but Laphroaig has a microbiome in it. And every distillery has a microbiome. You've got your yeast, you've got just your area that you're in has different bacteria, has different whatevers that flavor your whiskey. And that's something to think about, because even though they tried really, really hard to take Laphroaig's business, it was always going to be in vain. You just cannot reproduce the exact same whiskey somewhere else. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, worth pointing out. Now, Laphroaig, around 2003, went nuts with their different releases. They've got just dozens of different whiskeys at this point, including, as I mentioned before, their yearly release called Carchis. Now, Carchis is Old Irish for friendship, which is pretty cool because it's meant to be shared. But Lagavulin 10 is what is in every bar. It's something that people know. It's something, as I mentioned, most people have a story about. So let's talk about this one. Now, let's go ahead and taste this and see, we'll smell it first. Now, what I want you to do is, I want you to realize that this is gonna smell like smoke. That's what you're gonna get on the first smell here, unless you're, kind of a advanced whiskey drinker. So let's go ahead and smell it and just get that out of the way. So you're smelling smoke, and maybe a little muted, depends on how long you've left this in the glass, but you're gonna smell smoke. Now I want you to go one layer deeper. I want you to really try to ignore the smoke, move it to the side, and then think about salt air and see if you can detect some of the brininess that you get in Laphroaig. Do you get that? Do you smell a little bit of the salt in there? That's awesome. If you do, it's awesome. If you don't, keep trying. You'll get it eventually. After that, there's one more layer deep that you can go, and it's what a lot of us whiskey drinkers would refer to as like a medicinal quality. In this case, I'm going to say it smells a little bit like a Band-Aid, like the adhesive strips, whatever. It's what you're gonna get below the smoke and the salt. You're gonna get this Band-Aid-y kind of smell. Do you get that? I hope you do. So once we've gotten that, that's about as deep as Laphroaig goes. Laphroaig 10 is about being smoky. It's not really about complexity or crazy depth. It's smoky. So let's go ahead and give this a taste. Now again, you're gonna get smoke on your palate. So get that first taste out of the way. Taste all the smoke, and then we'll dig a little deeper again. So cheers. So now that is Laphroaig 10. That's the taste that everybody has a story about. So once you go past the smoke, I want you to take another sip. I'm not going to do it because it's hard to talk, but take another sip as I'm talking to you. See if you can get the briny salt out of there as well. And then again, see if you can taste what you would think would be like a Band-Aid. That's the flavor. It's exactly like the nose. And that's why this is cool. That doesn't happen very often in whiskeys, that the nose is identical or close to the taste. But the way that I often describe the flavor of this when I'm talking to either non-whiskey drinkers or beginner whiskey drinkers is I say, picture some driftwood that you threw on a campfire, and then you let it burn for a little while till it really got nice charcoal, and then you just doused it with water. And that smoke that comes up, that's what you're tasting. That's what you're smelling, a salty, smoky deliciousness. Now, as a slight aside here, I've got a personal story of what I really think this tastes like to me personally. Years and years ago, actually figuring about 12 years ago at this point, I went whitewater rafting with a bunch of friends, and later that night we were camping. And so we stayed at this campground, and as we were looking for firewood, stick, twig, whatever, we came across these railroad ties, which are those big wooden pieces that go across the railroad tracks. And there were a whole bunch of them there, and they were just in a pile. So we're like, oh, we'll burn one of those. Cool, that'll burn for hours. Now, these things were dark. They were... I'm pretty sure they were just filled with oil. I'm not sure exactly what makes a railroad tie, but I know that they're at least pressure treated, and the stuff that they do with those is not something you want to burn. Now, of course, 20-something-year-old Bill did not know that. So, me and my friends, we threw it on top of the fire. And our nice, gray, perfect, wonderful fire turned into black smoke. And I'm pretty sure a little piece of the world died that day. But the way that smelled, it was oily, it was dark and smoky and just caustic. Some of that reminds me a little bit of the way that this tastes and smells. So, what do I think about Laphroaig 10? I think it should be pretty clear that I'm a fan, right? But I think that you should be a fan too. But the problem is, it might take you a little while to become a fan. So what I'm going to suggest is that you buy a bottle of this. It's about $40, which for a Scotch in the US for sure, and maybe it's cheaper elsewhere, but for about $40, to buy a Scotch, that's a great deal. And having this on hand, whether you want to just take the time to get used to it and learn to love it, or if you want to try to give it to your own friends and let them have a story, either way, this is the kind of whiskey that is cool to have part of your collection and that occasionally you'll find yourself wanting to have. So I am suggesting you stock this because I think it's good to have a bottle on hand, even if you don't go through it super fast. So that's it for this episode of the Whiskey Dictionary, but I do want to remind you guys about the 2020 Whiskey Challenge. So check out thewhiskeydictionary.com, click on the top, and you'll learn everything there is to know about it. So I'll put up a couple of quick pictures here of people who have been participating in the challenge, but the idea is to drink more whiskey. Drink things that you don't often drink. Try new things. That's the whole goal of the 2020 Whiskey Challenge. So anyway, thank you for joining me here tonight on the Whiskey Dictionary. Be sure to check out the description. There's some cool links down there. And have a great rest of your night. Cheers.